I'm John.
I'm Rob.
And this is the Mint One podcast,
where we talk all things NFTs and the rise of blockchain gaming.
So Rob, it's been a busy week for the both of us.
It has, and to relax us, we're going to be talking about the ever so complicated digital identity problem.
So Rob, it was great to see you again in person this week.
Yeah,
at Metaverse London. Yeah, we are, and it was a really good event. A modest attendance, should we say, but following along the lines of the other event they did earlier this year, it was really, really good. A high caliber of attendee and of speaker, I should say. Yeah,
it was good. It certainly wasn't. It didn't feel sparsely populated. There was always people around, and as I said to you, I came off stage after the keynote with Sebastian Bourget, Tim from Venley. I can't pronounce his surname, so I don't pronounce his surname because I'd rather just not say it than not get it wrong. And then Robbie Young from Animoca. And I went to the back of the hall outside the lecture room where we were in, and it took me like 2 hours to get back to the hall because people were saying hello and introducing themselves, and there was networking. And I think it was a really good event, and there was a lot of networking compared to some other Web3 events I've been to. There was a real focus on talking, so I thought it was good. I was impressed with the event overall.
Yeah, no, a great event, a great 2-day event. I'm looking forward to the next one, that's for sure. But of course, the event was all about the metaverse and the future of the metaverse, and is it feasible, is it possible, all of this kind of thing. But it did kind of touch tangentially onto what we're going to discuss today on the pod, which is gamer identities. You chose this subject for the pod, Rob. So do you just want to go into your initial thoughts?
Yeah, so there was a few prompts. Firstly, we spoke about it last week on the pod. It's an area I feel very strongly about because I think it's a real positive, or it has the potential to be a real positive from Web3 or of Web3. Then there is a lecture or a talk, I should say. There was a Metaverse. What am I saying? Let me just start that again. You don't need to cut. I'm just going to express myself properly like a normal English human that can speak my language. Right. There was a talk at Enter the Metaverse on gamer identities. The gentleman was plugging his company, the company he works for, but the topic is very interesting. It was mainly focused on gamer identities, which is really where my interest is. But the broader subject of digital identity is something I'm interested in. I've actually written a little bit. I ghost wrote some stuff for a few different people on this topic earlier this year, which caused me to really go down the rabbit hole. And it is a rabbit hole trying to figure it all out. So yeah, it's something I just want to go over and talk about. And there's a few things that annoy me. I know there's a few things that annoy you that are related. So we can both have a little rant. Do you want to get started? What are your thoughts on the subject? Just right off the bat, what are you thinking about digital identity?
So stretching back since the beginning of games, so to speak, there's always been little cliques. You've had your Sega fans, your PlayStation fans, etc. And there's always been this strong association in gaming communities to really rally around, one camp or the other, whether it's, Nintendo or Sega or PlayStation and Xbox or Alliance and Hordes in WoW. And I think Web3 brings with it I think a unique opportunity to further that even more, and to really build these communities up and make them a meaningful part of being a gamer again. Because, for the longest time, whether you was in the PlayStation camp or the Xbox camp, you enjoyed one console over the other, but there was no meaningful real end product to picking a side. It was just, that's what you played and that was it. Yeah. But I think Web3, because it's so community focused, and because with the advent of blockchain tech and NFTs, you can do so much more with fostering a community, helping to build one, and just making that mean something. I feel like shoehorning education into this, but I feel it's going to be a bit forced, so I might leave it for now.
Okay.
Are your thoughts along the same sorts of lines, or do you have anything to add to that?
So I think the systems we have at the moment mean that your digital identity is mostly siloed in whatever ecosystem you're in. That could be as small as a game, could be as broad as, an entire platform, say Steam or Battle.net, for example. Yep. Then people obviously tie them together. Like I've got a friend who is unreasonably attached to the very first username he ever picked for a game character. And he has used this character name across everything. He had some success in games, and years and years, like a decade ago, people would say, "Oh, are you the real?" I'm not going to say his username. It's kind of like doxing, but they'd say it was like Jeff. They'd be like, "Oh my God, are you the real Jeff?" And he'd be like, "Yeah, I'm the real Jeff." He loved it, and he definitely still loves it. So he's always kept this username, and he uses it in all games. But that's kind of a weak link. Just that's the only sort of persistent identity, is the word that you just keep using. Obviously anyone can use his username and many people have, particularly on the games he got success in, that people steal his name. So it just seems like a really weak way of keeping your identity, and that is what he's trying to do. And it's what we all try and do. Like, I think we all often use similar usernames, and we'll keep it through because we want this sort of sense of identity. And perhaps, people we've played with before will recognize our name. I'm sure that's happened to all of us in one way or another, but we don't really have a system for it. And the thing that got me thinking about it, which I'm kind of jumping the gun a little bit, but it was, social logins. So social logins are weird. They're useful. A lot of people talk against them, and warn against them because, you don't have control of your data, and it's probably not the safest way to log into something, but it's a very good system. It's a very quick system. And so your social media profile became a kind of versatile identity that you would use to log into sites, but it kind of tied you together. It was always linked back to this same place, right? So let's say you can log into wax.io. You can log into your Wax cloud wallet with your Facebook profile. I think that's correct, isn't it?
Yep.
I've never done it. But so you can do that on Wax. You could do that. So you could have, Wax, you could have Instagram, that's part of Facebook Meta, but whatever. You could have Instagram. You could have all these different things that you use the internet for. And you could log in with your Facebook account, which is kind of like this core identity that you're always harking back to. It always points back to the same identity that's persistent through all these websites. And it occurred to me that outside of social media, we don't have that. We don't have this one persistent login that works across all things you do on the internet. And that's a weird situation to have when you look at it, that social logins have become so popular and so prevalent. Web3 almost automatically has this with wallets. And there are a number of companies that are trying to figure this out, where essentially your assets on every chain and everything is all tied to one core identity. And so this is kind of a problem, I think, that is outside of gaming, but also, it ties into gaming quite nicely. So that was a big, long monologue. So thoughts?
No, I think obviously MetaMask is kind of the leader in that respect, irregardless of if they're collecting people's IP addresses or not, but let's not go into that. But they've become the number one wallet for the majority of people. And, we're starting to see various... so Ready Player Me, for example, where you can create a 3D avatar and then import that into various quote-unquote metaverse environments.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I think that has so much potential, because it's no longer just a username then that people recognize you by. It's actually what you look like in a digital space. And kind of touching that back to when Meta was showcasing their, facial, construction technology thing, if that can be imported into a tool like Ready Player Me, you can have realistic avatars in Web3 spaces. That can be really cool. Of course, not everybody wants to look like their real selves. Some people want to look like elves or orcs or whatever it is, but having that name and that identity, and I mean, even if you could set up some more things about that character, like, I don't know, a bit of backstory, whatever, like you used to get on like old RP servers in World of Warcraft and stuff. It would be really cool to be able to, you know, those achievements and those events through the life of that character are recorded online, as with everything else, because, you know, in Web 2, it's mostly hearsay and tall tales and word of mouth, you know. Like in a WoW server, if an Alliance guy went around killing all Horde players, then that would just spread by word of mouth, like, oh God, if you see this person, you got to go. But now you'll be able to track their identity and be like, oh my God, he's got this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy, and he just, like, there's a profile and it's well known, and you know, it's just such a more meaningful sense of presence and purpose, I feel. Hopefully we don't lose any of that kind of word of mouth, oh, I've heard a rumor of this kind of thing, because that's cool. But I think just having the opportunity to, you know, firm up your digital identity in that kind of way is really powerful.
Yeah, so I think you've touched on something which I've never quite put in these words before, but obviously I talk about digital provenance all the time when it comes to NFTs, which, I mean, the word provenance probably isn't perfectly accurate for what I'm trying to say, but everybody's using the term now. It essentially just means the history of an NFT, so you can see where it's been, you know, who bought it, who sold it, who found it, and so on. So what we're kind of talking about is a digital provenance with your own identity. So if your identity were an NFT, you would be able to see, you know, what guilds you'd been in, or what clans you'd been in, or you know, what games you'd played with whom, and so on. This, as much as I think that is a positive and probably where we're heading for, that's kind of a double-edged sword as well. Do you remember I think we talked about this about 6 months ago, the right to be forgotten?
Yep.
The piece of legislation where if people want something removed from the internet forever, they can. That's kind of at odds with blockchain technology. And this is, I mean, perhaps we're just touching on the problems that people are going to encounter when they start working on these persistent identities. But if we have how do I word this? It depends on how transparent we make it. If we make the identities too transparent and people's online life is laid bare, I think that is a negative. I think you have a problem, and you wouldn't have the right to be forgotten. So, I mean, imagine the dumb things you did, like when you were late teen or whatever. But then if we make it too restrictive, many of the core functions of an online identity just stop functioning.
Mm-hmm.
So
no, this was discussed a bit on my second panel at Enter the Metaverse. We had Ben Goertzel, the world leading authority on artificial intelligence. Had a few other panelists, but we also had a guy called Marcus Wignall. I think that's his name. His name is Marcus. That was definitely his first name. He was basically a lawyer who specializes in kind of the advent of the metaverse and kind of what legal implications that could have. And we was deep into this discussion of exactly what we're talking about, kind of this digital provenance, this history, this, you know, knowing what a guy did 6-8 months ago. And he was like, it directly infringes on this right to be forgotten in a way that, like, it doesn't, like, from a legal perspective, it just doesn't work. Like, if somebody has a right to be forgotten, how do you remove that detail from the blockchain when they request it? You can't. It's there.
Yeah.
So it makes it difficult, but he did also say that, you know, there are solutions to things like this, but it requires a lot of people spending a lot of time sitting down in dark rooms with bits of paper and just trying to hash this out. But it's interesting to see how this will continue to build and develop and how it will be considered. There are, of course, plenty of benefits to knowing someone's entire digital provenance, but again, as you said, you don't want that one mistake you made 5 years ago to be the thing that defines you if everything you ever do online is tracked. And that's not to say that people should be able to get away with, you know, heinous crimes that they've committed or bad things that they've done. But I think we'd all admit there's a very big difference between someone who's 13 making a mistake and someone who's 18 making a mistake. Like something, especially when like kids are growing up, it's tricky. And I think this got brought up on the panel as well, the fact that the metaverse is strictly 18 plus at the moment, or it should be in theory anyway. Yeah. But it's, I think it's it's at the end of the day, it's the case of who gets access to all of this information. Like, is it the case that this digital profile will only mark like particular events, like particular achievements you got in certain games, or will it track every single person you met, every single person you killed, all of your like major, hey, you stole 5,000, Shiba Inu coins from this guy's wallet to your wallet 3.5 years ago,
Yeah.
and it's, some people like to call it responsibility, and I think it gives a heightened sense of responsibility to everyone's online activity, that's for sure. But then again, does that infringe on kind of this ideal of freedom that Web3 propagates? You'll get different answers from different people on that, I think.
Yeah, it's very complicated. And as with most things of this nature, I imagine it's quite hard to draw the line, or like where we would draw the line. I don't think it should be an open book, and I don't think anybody would necessarily want it to be an open book, or rather, you must be in control of whether it's an open book. You need to be able to offer as much data as you want to offer. Some things, I guess, will have to be just transparent, but then not everything needs to be transparent. And this touches on self-sovereign identity, where you control your data. Now, Web2, your data was a commodity that got exploited. And funnily enough, one of the companies that I did a tiny bit of work for was a company called Nuggets, which is working in Web3 at the moment, as a sort of persistent identity program. I don't have any affiliation with them. I haven't even used the product. But what they're doing is interesting. And, so essentially for their self-sovereign identity, they're using, zero knowledge proof, and you don't share too much data. So in case people aren't sure what the problem is here, when you, say you were going to buy a crate of beer off Amazon. This is probably a bad example I'm making up on the fly, but let's say you're buying a crate of beer off Amazon. No, let's say you're buying a crate of beer in a shop. You walked into a shop. Okay. You said, I want to buy this crate of beer. And they say, how old are you? Show me your ID. So you give them your driver's license, and they pick up your driver's license, and they see your name, your address, the date you got your driver's license, the date your driver's license expires. Like, they see all this stuff that is absolutely irrelevant. What they really need is a verified yes or no to that question. So there needs to be an intermediary that says, yeah, he's over 18, or no, he's under 18. That's all they need. They don't even need to know your age. They just need to know, are you older or younger than 18? And so this is where zero knowledge proof comes in, and the Web3 identity through Nuggets or through whatever you want to use can do that. So it just solves that problem of oversharing your data. So I've been thinking about this a lot lately. There's been a lot of showers that have taken a little bit too long, where I've just been trying to pull apart problems. And one of them is, I think part of the reason we had to use social logins before now, and we haven't had this persistent digital identity, is because you couldn't own your digital identity before blockchain. The thing I'm trying to get at is tying all of your identities into one throughout time, throughout all the different platforms and everything. And if you couldn't own that, I'm not entirely sure what function it serves. And that was kind of part of the problem. And this is what I've accidentally fallen into, where I'm going to rant. And that is, people call crypto the Wild West. We hear it all the time. Oh, Web3 is the Wild West. The internet thus far has been the Wild West with our data. It has been stealing and pillaging and using our data, but multiple corporations have been doing it for decades now. That's a big issue that we're trying to fix gradually. That Web3, identities, these persistent digital identities, zero knowledge proof, self-sovereign identity, this fixes that. And to me, the harvesting of my data is something that ought to be fixed soon. And, Web3 offers a solution to that. Again, monologue. Sorry.
I think one thing that I'd say particularly over the last 6 or 7 years, and especially since the Cambridge Analytica scandal for Facebook at the time came out, is people really became aware of just how much data about them is owned by third parties. And there's been this desire to share less and less data with third parties, and to try and, I say own your data, but you can't own your data in Web2. This is the whole point, and this is what Web3 could allow you to do, is have more direct ownership over your data and who has access to it, and hopefully help to try and alleviate some of these problems that were just so prevalent in Web2. I think that exactly how that would work is tricky, because we're talking about things being on the blockchain, where by design everything is open, and by design everyone has access to everything. Does that present in itself some data security risks? Yes, of course it does. But as you've said, in that shop, buying a crate of beer scenario, they don't need to know all of your data. They just need yes or no answers to questions.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not aware of any system that is set up in this way so far, but that's an avenue we could go down. I mean, who knows what data privacy is going to look like at the end of the day in Web3. There are incredibly open aspects to it in terms of, data on the blockchain itself. And then there's incredibly closed aspects to it. For example, when, I hate to bring up FTX, but when they were doing a lot of their things not on chain, so nobody could actually see what the fuck they were doing. At the end of the day, it's just people in positions of power being responsible with what they have access to, and kind of more importantly, what their intentions are to do with whatever data they have access to. If, let's say, we handle all of this data management over to an AI, for example, you might think that helps solve the problem, because, it's not a human looking at the data, it's a computer, and they know what to look out for, and they can't steal from us. They're just looking for certain keywords or whatever. But then you're like, well, who's built that AI, and are they secretly skimming data? And it's one of those, data privacy is one of those never-ending problems. I don't think Web3 is going to entirely solve it, but I think it's going to be way better than the Wild West we had in Web2.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just limiting the number of people that have access to your data and what they can do with it. I guess the other issue is how your identity is used in terms of reputation. We've touched on this already about, that guy used to kill people in this game, don't trust him, or whatever. And we can come back to that. But in terms of, like on eBay, when you have people, a seller rating and a buyer rating, I think a few of the solutions I've looked at in Web3 have sort of hinted towards a merit-based reputation, which is very Black Mirror to me. It starts to get a little bit Black Mirror, like, if someone annoys you, downvoting them as a horrible person. We got to be careful where, it takes you. But I think it differs gamer identity and, digital identity outside of gaming. If you can separate them, I think there should be a distinction. There's more value to a broader history in gaming, because it's less, I don't know, finding out every game someone's played is, to me, fine. Finding out everything they've ever bought is not fine, so, I'm not sure. Then there's, I'm just going to keep throwing problems at you, and you can solve them.
Go for it.
You mentioned with the identity, if the AI takes data, which I think is already a thing with KYC, it just ticks boxes, looks for your eyes with the passport photos and face shape and everything. But you'd only have to do it once. But then is that too centralized? You're always, this is what you were saying, that you're always at risk of losing it. It could be a hack or whatever, but that can always happen. There's only so far you can go.
Yeah, when you come down to kind of the kind of the base level of these kinds of things, there's very few things that are truly centralized from like one moment of initiation, if that makes sense. Like, for example, you mentioned scanning a passport there. You know, you have to get a new passport, at least in the UK, every 10 years. And that usually means new passport photo and probably new addresses and new places you've been and all this kind of thing. So there's very few things that are kind of set in stone and never change kind of thing. Like, I don't know, your date of birth or... That's probably one of the only ones I can think of. I was going to say names then, but I think, hang on, you can then change your name by deed poll. And anyway, it's an interesting topic of discussion. That's for sure. That episode of Black Mirror, I think it's called Nosedive, where they point their smartphones to each other and then give them scores depending on like how good or bad an interaction you've had with them in real life. I've got that episode ingrained in my memory.
Terrifying.
I think and I think, unless we're careful, there is a real danger of that becoming the norm in a Web3 environment where, let's say we did put some sort of rating system in place, you know, your entire social standing in the online space, at the very least, is then solely determined by other people's positive and or negative opinions of you. And those kinds of systems, of course, are always open to being exploited. You know, we've discussed on the Atomic Hub team about having like collection reviews or like scores at some point. And we've always gone forwards and backwards on the idea because of that precise issue. You know, it's cool and it's convenient, but how do you eliminate all of these ways it can possibly be exploited by people or taken advantage of? And it's a really, really tough thing to design in a way that cannot be tampered with in ways that you didn't intend. I think all of the conversation up to this point, especially at the start when we were talking about transferring gamers' identities across games and across platforms, that's explaining NFTs and explaining Web3 in a way like that is way more attractive to a traditional gamer than just saying digital ownership, NFTs, because those are just buzzwords. And I'm going to start getting into my rant topic now.
Let's do it.
Not just to enter the Metaverse London, but at NFT NYC, NFT London, and in fairness, I've heard a few people say it at the Atomic Hub team event that I'm at currently in Tenerife, which is why I have this strange brown background. There's a lot of people that like to say, and this is just my opinion, I'm not saying anybody's necessarily wrong, but there's a lot of people that say, education's the problem. People just don't get it. Like, they don't get why NFTs are beneficial to them. They don't get why Web3 is. And the more I talk to traditional gamers, like I've got tons of friends that are gamers. You know, they play MMOs, they play MOBAs, they play, you know, esportsy titles. You know, I think we've always fallen into this trap in Web3 of just believing everybody else isn't in NFTs yet because they just don't get it. Like, they don't understand. Like, and somehow we're not above them, but we're smarter than them for understanding it. And that's not the case in most cases. There's absolutely misconceptions around. You know, there's misconceptions around eco-friendliness and about, you know, that sometimes if a big company like Blizzard got hold of NFTs, they'll just use them to drain money out of the community. I have no doubt about that. But there are also some very genuine concerns that gamers have about NFTs that we can't just explain away by saying, they don't understand or they don't get why it won't benefit them. Like, people or there are gamers that are genuinely worried about the supposed tokenization of everything. The fact that when you go to play a game, if all games have NFTs in them now, you've kind of diminished the fun aspect of playing video games because earning then becomes the main focus for most people. Like, for example, Elden Ring, fantastic game. I would not want that game to have NFTs in it. Because if I'm playing a game like Elden Ring, in the back of my mind thinking, but this mob has like this small percentage chance of dropping this rare item and then I can sell it, it completely changes the way I approach the game. As it would do for most people playing it, I think. And even for the people that it doesn't affect, they're tangentially related to it. You know, unintentionally, if people are able to freely trade items and freely trade things that they're able to get in a game, that drastically changes the whole purpose and point and gameplay of the game itself and how the community feels about the game. And that's a genuine concern. And there's similar arguments to that where, I can understand where gamers are coming from. And I think it's very important as an industry to not try and tackle this whole onboarding issue as people just don't get it. Like, people, like NFTs have been in the zeitgeist for enough time now that if people seriously wanted to look into them, they can do. There's plenty of resources out there. There's plenty of things for them to read about. There might not be very many like good games in the Web3 space right now or that have NFTs, but the whole concept of being able to have NFTs in a game is, I'd say, decently well understood. You've got games that are play to earn, but you've also got games where the NFTs are just cosmetics. And I think it's not as simple. I think that's the point I'm trying to get at. It's not as simple as just, hey, we publish like a video and articles and the world will love us. Or, we publish one game and the world will love us. Like, that doesn't eliminate all the issues that NFTs provide. And don't get me wrong, like, I'm a big fan of having NFTs in video games and NFTs in Web3, but it's not solely positive. Nothing ever is. There are downsides to it, but they're downsides that not just game devs, but I think people in the industry need to consider. I mean, we've been talking today about onboarding in Atomic Hub, and yes, we do need to have resources that explain, why an NFT might be of benefit. But I think just saying, you can now truly own your digital items is not the answer, because frankly, what gamer really cares? Let's say you have skins in CS:GO. There's black market ways to sell them for real world money now if you want to, and plenty of people do that. Would NFT CSGO skins allow them to be traded in a more prim and proper way on an open marketplace? Absolutely. But to a CSGO player, that's not really anything new. There's always something that's had the opportunity to be done. But now that the whole concept of being able to freely trade items on this kind of open economy has been given the green light by the developers, whether the players actually want that or not, I think it can be really harmful to some communities of Web2 games. I think brand new games, if they're started with the expectation that, hey, you'll be able to earn tokens, you'll be able to earn NFTs, and you'll be able to freely trade them however you like, that might be a little easier to manage. But there's a lot of pain points to go through. Or there's a lot of pain points that traditional gamers have that we don't have easy answers to. That was kind of ranty. But what's your immediate reaction to that?
Agree with most of it. Want to add some to some of it, and I think I disagree with one bit. So let me make my way through them. The bit I want to add something to is education is a weird one when people say that, because I think there's actually people intend different things when they say it. So some people definitely are saying it what you're saying it. That's sort of smug, self-satisfied. They just don't understand. When they get educated, they'll know what I'm on about. They'll know what I see. I mean, when has that ever helped anyone? It's disgusting. I can't stand that. So yeah, that can get in the bin. However, I think Robbie Young actually said something about education on the panel. And he's far too intelligent to be speaking like that. And I think what he means, which is what I would mean if I were to say it, is that it's not about intelligence or anything. It's just about conveying some information that perhaps they may not have seen. Like, for example, the digital identity thing about having imagine your username is across every single game. It's locked in forever. I think that's quite a cool thing that a lot of gamers would be interested in. And even if you took blockchain out of it completely somehow and retain the ownership or whatever, I think a lot of gamers would be interested in that. And I would say almost no gamer who isn't interested in Web3 has thought about that problem with being solved by blockchain. I mean, it's just, they just haven't had that information given to them yet. So how would they know? It's not, I mean, most people in Web3 haven't really given that much thought. Jump in.
I was going to jump in, then I forgot what I was going to say. So you can continue, and I'll think about what it is.
Okay. I spotted you. You look like you were going to say something. So jump in whenever you're ready.
Sure.
So I think most people haven't thought about these things. So if I don't like saying the word education about this, but if I were to say education, I would mean I'd love people to see what I see. And it's not because I've seen something that's hard to see or because I've got such astute observations about things. It's just because I've looked into something and I think I see value in it. And a lot of people have looked into it and then they don't see value and they seem to be they're louder than I am or whatever. I think there's information there that people haven't seen. And if they saw it, they would like it. That's more or less what it is. It's like trying to get your kid to try food. Like if you'd actually try it, you'd like it, I'm sure. But again, that's patronizing. It's so hard to say this without
I don't know. I
seeming
think
patronizing.
If it's Brussels sprouts or spinach or something, then I can understand the hesitancy. But
Brussels sprouts. Yep.
Oh no! When you're a kid, yeah. I like Brussels sprouts now. I don't know about you.
No,
maybe we have different palates. But anyway, I remember what I was going to say, which is basically that the whole kind of plan for Web3 games, for the most part, to onboard people from the Web2 or the traditional gaming space has been very money oriented. It's like, hey, you can make money. Do you not want to get money for all these things you've done? And I think if we had it as more of an open discussion, being like, hey, these NFTs allow you to do this.
Yeah.
But here's and just allow them to ask questions that we can then answer. I mean, as Atomica, we're going through this problem literally right now. We're partnering with Beast Kingdom to do a line of digital NFT drops of their figurines. Beast Kingdom announced it on their Twitter a few days ago. And the post blew up in their community, and there's loads of responses being like, "Oh my god, NFTs! No, they're bad for the environment, and they're not good for collectors, and all of this stuff." And then we have to think, okay, let's take a step back. How do we approach this? How do we create an open platform for people to raise their concerns and ask the questions that they want to ask, and hopefully get some answers that help reassure them that this is just technology. This is a new way of doing things. It's not necessarily inherently evil or anything. It's just a new way of going about doing similar things to what we've done in the past. Instead of them selling figurines through their website, you can now get NFT packs, and if you're lucky, you have a chance of getting exclusive figurines that only people that get involved in this can be a part. But it extends to games, it extends to art, it extends to all the different realms that NFTs and Web3 exist in. And I think we just have to do a better, and there are games that are doing this in a great way. We continuously mention Skyweaver when we discuss this topic about how it does a pretty good job of onboarding people to Web3 without them knowing it. And I think that with the verbiage in Web3 having such a bad reputation, I think even Web3 is a pretty derided term by this point, just because of its connotations to NFTs and cryptocurrency and play to earn. But I think, instead of just pleading with people as to why this is the next big thing and why they must jump on board now and all of this, if we just have an open platform, I think that's a much better way to get across why people should care. I mean, when the first thing that the general public or traditional gamers see about the NFT space, I mean, let's say they go and they've heard about the Bored Ape Yacht Club and they go on their Twitter and they click on a tweet, they look at the replies, and it's all like, bullish about Bored Apes, or this NFT's worth a stupid amount of money, or and everything about it is just about what it can gain you rather than what it can actually be used for, which in my view is the more exciting thing. But then again, we need projects of prominence to come to the fore that do approach things in that way. So
it's when you put it like that it is weird the way support is in Web3. It's almost like if you take GameStop. It's become almost Web3 where people are like GameStop to the moon, like GME. But if you like Nike, for example, then you want to see it improve. You like the products. You don't necessarily own stock in it. And there needs to be like this separation of church and state in Web3 where you can like a project or an idea or an ecosystem without being obsessed about it making you money. Like you're just supporting it. Like for example, a good example for me is Polygon. Actually, it's not a good example because we just partnered with them. So it's actually a bad example. But it would have, what I was going to say is I've always really liked Polygon and I think they're brilliant for Web3, but I don't own any Matic. I don't own any.
Yeah.
I don't have any of their token. So if they went to the moon, as I hope they do, I'd make no money from it. I'd still make no money, but we are partnered. So I've ruined by an example. But the point's there. There is this obsession with financial returns. And if people are right on what happens next with the trends in blockchain, and I think they are right, which is it's gone from, ICOs, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, and now the next one's utility. That's where the separation should start really, because the utility is separate from the value, but then there's always going to be that the talk of value, because if something becomes a fantastic utility for someone or the community or anyone like Google, Google is the titan it is because it's so bloody useful to everyone and has been for so long. And there is loads of money to be made, but you can be like, I support Google, I guess, because I use it all the time.
But you're not going to tweet Google to the moon anytime soon.
No, they're already on it. I mean,
yeah, it's true. That is a good point. But I mean, you kind of glossed over the whole separation of church and state line there. And I think that's so important for this space, or it's such a critical topic, because church and state are so intricately interlinked in Web3 because of this whole community, this kind of, the community is everything. So if you like a project, I wouldn't say convinced to, but the whole kind of appeal of Web3 is, hey, if you like something, you can get involved and you can help it grow, and you yourself can you can make money and you can profit from these things. And it's very difficult to like an NFT project, let's say hold an NFT from that project or be somewhat involved in that project, and then not see a benefit if you spend a lot of time hyping that project up or making content about that project or whatever it is. And I'm not sure what people's thoughts would be on a separation of church and state in Web3. It probably is good for like the health of Web3 as a whole going into the future, but because of this whole kind of community around, owning an NFT as part of a collection, it's difficult to separate the two. I mean, I've got a new PFP this week. It's a Deadfellas NFT. I became part of. So I was literally just about to say it there. It wasn't, I've just bought an NFT and I have an NFT now. It's, I've bought an NFT. I'm now part of their community. I've joined a group of up to 10,000 other people that also have this NFT and like the project and want to see it succeed. There is currently no way really in Web3 for you to own the NFTs that are part of a project and not then be rewarded financially or otherwise for that project doing well. And it could be a big problem. It depends who's running that project at the end of the day.
But this comes back to identity, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
But why did you buy that? Why did you buy that profile picture? I mean, obviously you like the art style, but surely if you've made it your profile picture, I don't want to get, all deep here. If you've made it your profile picture, you see something in that collection that you are happy for people to associate with you. Like you and that project are now connected publicly, and you are comfortable with that because you like the project in a way that you want to share, like as we do with anything, music, clothes, cars, whatever. So this all does tie into identity, but the problem we're having is this church and state issue, and I'm not sure it can ever be fully disconnected, and I'm not sure it ever should be. I was thinking about watches. As you know, I buy old watches and I do look to sell them as well. And when I buy old watches, I guess I am looking to make money, maybe sometimes if the opportunity is there. I hope I do make money. But these watches, I mean, I love them. that Breitling Nabatimer that I've been wearing from time to time, I love it like a child. I mean, I look at it all the time. I'm so happy with it. But if someone offered me twice what I paid for it, I would sell it.
Yeah. And I think this is the thing you can do with products that is much harder to do with NFTs. For example, I love Grand Seiko watches. I've had many in my hands. I've looked at many in shop windows, but I've never owned one. But I still feel like I've got enjoyment out of enjoying that brand, if that makes sense. Like, I don't, I'm not going to enjoy it as much as if I actually dropped $3,000 on a Grand Seiko, but I can appreciate it for what it is and I can wish them success. Whereas in Web3, it's very much this mentality of if you really like something, you should become a part of it. And then you become part of the story.
That is cool, right?
Yeah, it's very cool. But it's like, I love doodles, right? I've never owned a doodle. Can I relate that in a similar way to me liking Grand Seikos? I don't know. Because, you see these nice watches in shop windows and sometimes you go in store and you play with them a bit. And I suppose with like a doodle or with a blue chip NFT, you see multiple people that you might respect or admire that have them as their profile pictures. And you get to look into their communities via their Discord, which is cool. But it's being a part of this is the important distinction I've just thought of it. Being a part of the Grand Seiko community, or any community around products, I don't think you necessarily have to own that product. Maybe people would disagree on that. But for NFTs in particular, it's like I wouldn't say I'm part of the doodles community just because I like doodles. I'm just like I'm an outsider that has an appreciation for something. So, So what you would view a community as in Web3 and what you'd view it as in Web2 are two different things. Now, do I think Web3 communities have more value because they're more invested into the projects that they're a part of? Yes, they do. But when it comes to digital identity, and especially the money point that we keep bringing up and how we make this appeal to the wider public, these are things that they look at and they go, so I can't just like this brand. You really want me to be a part of it and buy into it and it be an all-consuming part of my online identity, which is, I can understandably might concern people.
So I think the problem you're talking about with NFTs is probably specific to not only art collections, but this PFPs brand mostly. Of community PFP kind of collection, not everything, like games. Sure. I think you could not own any NFTs for a game and still be a part of the community. Sure. And products outside, I mean, I was part of a photography community before I ever bought a camera. So I think they can coexist, but just like a sort of funny side point, really. Have you ever seen, it was like a web show called Talking Funny. It was a one-off.
Yes, I have. 4
comedians, Ricky Gervais, Jerry Seinfeld, Louis C.K. and Chris Rock. And they're talking about stand-up comedy. And one thing in this thing just stuck with me forever. And it was Louis C.K. and they were talking about why they got into being a stand-up. And Louis C.K. said something along the lines of he was hanging around a comedy club and he was like, I just want to be one of those guys. And I think that explains identity for everyone. You just see something and you're like, I want to be one of those guys. And that's particularly powerful with PFPs. I think you see all these people tweeting every day or streaming or whatever. And you're like, he's got that cool PFP. I wish I was part of that community. I want to be one of those guys. It's the same with games. Like, you see Twitch streamers playing a certain game. You're like, I want to be like that. I want to play that. That game looks fun, sure. But also I want to be part of that sort of cultural zeitgeist of like Modern Warfare's Warzone is a great example because you've got all these memes and TikTok accounts and YouTube. And there's so much around it that circulates around it that you kind of want to be one of those guys. You just want to be a part of that movement. And I think that is improved by Web3 identities, by persistent digital identity. Because at the moment, if you change your PFP, it's almost like you've left one community for another, even though you haven't.
That I will say that crossed my mind when I switched my PFP out because it used to be a lonely pop. which I adore that community and what it stands for, and its focus on mental health and loneliness and all of that kind of thing. Yeah. But I just felt it was, like, I still love that project, but I just felt it was time for a change and to freshen up my persona, I suppose.
You don't love it less.
No, it's just another part of what and that's another part of this digital identity topic. Again, I guess it relates to PFPs more than any other project that kind of, I don't think it's discussed very often in the Web3 space, is that you tend to tie your entire digital identity around one image, one PFP, one picture. Yeah. And it's not like the real world where you know, let's say I like singing, I like guitar, I like Formula One, I like Newcastle United. Like, people know that about me IRL, but I can't get all of that across in a profile picture. So it does, NFTs on social media by design shoehorn people into certain groups. That's not a bad thing, but there's two sides to it. So,
well, I wonder if the OpenSea profiles will be, I wonder if digital identities will be something akin to the OpenSea profiles where you can select a few NFTs that you like. Obviously, you still have your profile picture, but you can select a sort of mini gallery of things you like. I'd love that to exist in the gamer identity. Honestly, I'd love to work on this problem, like the Token Gamer app. Yeah. I'd love to, if there's any VCs that want to throw millions at us, I'd love to work on this problem, because I think the gamer identity would be so cool if you have, like, imagine the TG app and kids are opening it and they've got a selection of their favorite gaming NFTs that they found, like skins, like we talked about last week, like the Fortnite skins, people getting bullied because, and one of our writers did take that out of context from about 4 weeks ago, where I said, I don't care about kids getting bullied over Fortnite skins when I meant they'll get bullied about anything. It doesn't matter if it's Fortnite or whatever. But I think it'd be really cool. And I think your gamer identity, it would be so interesting to see. Like, I'd still have, if my gamer identity, I was thinking, if you could pick items from any game you've ever played throughout history, like, for me, I think I would have the limited edition Audi TT from Gran Turismo 1. I'd probably have, something from early World of Warcraft. I'm not sure what I was most proud of. Maybe like a PvP mount that took months to get, or something like that. I think I got a golden skin on one of the Call of Duties. You know, I would collate my gaming achievements and things that I'm proud of. But then there's been plenty of games that I have achieved things that I don't want to share, because it doesn't necessarily, it's not like congruent with my the identity I want to project to other people. I just think this is such a cool problem that I'm overthinking.
This is the thing with a digital identity in the Web3 space that records everything you do. Those achievements you've got in games that you don't want to share, could people then find those out? Oh my god, you 100%ed Braps the game on Nintendo Wii in 2006. You know,
I told you that in confidence, so. Yeah, but this is why we need self-sovereign identity. You need to be able to choose what data is shared. But with gaming, I do think it should be more open. I mean, the Steam's pretty open. Like, what achievements you have on Steam, you could go through my Steam and see. You could even see how many hours I've played on Steam of various games. Like, you can see I've played something like 300 hours of Rocket League. I'm absolutely abysmal at it. So
that's a double-edged sword. That's for sure.
Yeah, there's some games I don't want to know my hours.
Oh, the one thing I'm forever happy with League of Legends is that they don't give you an easy way to track how many hours you've played in that game, because I'm almost certain it's in the thousands, but I don't want to know what it is.
No, but it was cool. But perhaps you could have, even if achievements were NFTs, not just in-game items, but if achievements were NFTs, or you could. I mean, we've already seen people rewarding stuff with NFTs. So let's say you got to, I haven't played that much of League, but let's say you got to Diamond or whatever's quite high. And for that season, you get an NFT of a picture of a diamond with a season name underneath it. And then you could put that on your gamer profile. And I just like this sense of a persistent identity across all game worlds. It doesn't, I guess it won't always make sense. It'll be like RP things, but even if it's just like your account name, like one step away from your actual gaming experience, if you want to be fully immersed, I just think it's an interesting problem. And, I'm excited to solve it if someone wants to throw investment at me.
Fingers crossed. And I think from like a social point of view, we've already seen that these metrics, in particular when it comes to Steam accounts, are things that people care about. I don't know if you've ever looked at like the reviews of various Steam games, but especially the more popular ones, you'll see someone, because every time you leave a review on a game on Steam, it shows how many hours the person has played that game for, and then obviously their comment. And you'll get
there's always funny interactions.
Or someone that's played like 4,000 hours or something, and their review is just "it's okay," and it just gets loads of upvotes because people are like, "Oh my god," they recognise the commitment there. And I think
Steam actually kind of fixed that problem. Just to add to that, because that was kind of a problem. People were, to be funny, people were downvoting a game that had 4,000 hours in, and so Steam added that funny tag, so you can vote something as funny. So it's now you can vote like good, bad, funny. And I think that is a potential solution to the whole, because otherwise it gets, that system of like the merit based system we talked about earlier is just so flawed.
Yeah, but hey, it goes to show that gaming communities in particular do value these particular stats if they're presented to them in the right way, and if people have particular opportunities to express their achievements or what they've done in the past. And I think whoever cracks this, I guess it's not a problem, it's more of an opportunity, but whoever nails the opportunity of having this Web3 identity that follows you from profile to profile, from place to place, game to game, it's going to be incredibly powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that was good. We covered a lot of ground. It started quite heavy and deep, where we started on general identity and more of the legal side, but the gaming side is obviously what excites me, and I think that is an opportunity rather than a problem. Is there anything else we need to speak about? I'm very interested in your room. It's a sort of hanging orb that looks like it's out of Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. I guess it's some sort of light fixture. I'm going to be honest, I've been that busy since I've landed. I've not really had time to take in my surroundings much. It's just been, go here for a meeting, call this person, meeting. I'm like, oh my God, Let me just get my bearings for 5 minutes. But yeah, without going into too much detail, as I said earlier, I'm in Tenerife at the moment, and it's nice. I'm with the Atomic Hub team. We're meeting again. Just to work in person, which is very strange when you spend all of your time working over Google Meet and Slack. But yeah, it's cool. It's a good change.
Web3 is so remote. If you look at the positions on LinkedIn, like they're all remote. Everything's remote. So yeah, it is kind of weird when you, like, Atomic Hub Live was really cool to see people like Kiefer, one of the Inspector Generals at Wax. Like I said, he wrote an article for Token Gamer in 2018. So I'd known him for 4 years. Like, Dave speaks to him more than I do. But we've known him for years, and I didn't even know what he looked like until, like, I went up to the table and Dave was like, I think that's Kiefer. And we were like, Kiefer? And then you have to be like, oh yeah, it's Rob from Token Gamer. But it is cool to see people in person. I mean, we did 9 months of episodes before we saw each other in person.
Yeah, which is crazy. And that's one of the best things about Web3, right? You can, whether it's a member of staff on your team or a colleague or someone in your community or us together doing the podcast, I think this whole online space has just allowed us to do so much more. And it's great to be working in an industry that not only facilitates that, but kind of cherishes it,
Yeah.
So, yeah, there we go.
Yep. Positive end.
I guess that was a very positive end to episode 47 of the Min One podcast. Rob, where can we find you?
Tokengamer.io, Token Gamer app, which is on Android and iOS, at Token Gamer News, twitch.tv/Token Gamer, YouTube /Token Gamer, Token Gamer, not Token Gaming. Enter the bloody metaverse. Oh, I was fuming about that because they sent me a speaker. You know your speaker card you shared on LinkedIn? Well, I shared one as well. Well, the first one they sent me said Token Gaming, and I emailed them and said, everywhere you've written my name and the company name, including the very speaker card you want me to share, has my company name wrong. Could you fix it? And they're like, yeah, no worries. Here's your new speaker card. And then I get there, and then the pass hanging around my neck was wrong. Then I was sitting on stage, and the incorrect company name was being projected above my head. I mean, they really kicked me in the nuts there. And like Venly shared a post like, our co-founders on panel, Rob Token Gaming. It's just annoying that they got that wrong. But it was a good event other than that. So yes, Token Gamer.
All the more reason to go to another one and get yourself on a panel or a speaking role again and get them to put your name correctly next.
Yeah, in capitals this time.
Yeah.
Sorry. Anyway, John, where can we find you?
No worries. So for the latest NFT and Web3 blockchain gaming news, it's nftinsider.io. It's been a bit slow on content this week. I've just literally come from into the Metaverse London straight here. But we have a few interesting things in the works, so look out for those. At nftinsider_io on Twitch on Twitter and Instagram. And then for me personally, it's at Hydropowd, HYDROPWRD. Speaking of digital identities, on every platform you can think of. So yeah, Twitter's the main one. You can check out my cool new Deadfellas PFP. And yeah, I've just been enjoying diving into some new communities lately and kind of confirming rumors I've heard, learning more about the ETH space, more about stuff on IMX and all sorts of other cool stuff. So yeah, nice. Exciting time for Web3 for sure, in the midst of everything being on fire with FTX and BlockFi and Gemini and Alameda. But let's leave those off this podcast, shall we?
Yeah.
We will indeed. Well, hey, thank you very much, everybody, for watching episode 47 of the Mint One podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. If you're watching on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, a 5-star podcast review would be awesome. Share it around if you want to as well. It's always great to get new eyes and new ears on the podcast. And follow us on Twitter at Mint1Pod. Awesome. We'll be back next week with...
No.
Oh, no, we won't, because you are abroad.
Yeah. I am in Tokyo next week, and the time difference and scheduling will make it impossible, but we'll be back the week after. Let's have a look at the schedule. So we'll probably do one, it'll be about the 16th. And then the next one will come out on the 23rd. So on the 22nd is when I think we get drunk and look over the predictions from last year.
I'm looking forward to it. Those predictions are going to be... very hilarious to look back on in hindsight, but
yep, we're going to out ourselves as clueless.
I don't think either of us predicted the collapse of several major exchanges.
I don't think very few people. I think there's like 5 people worldwide that predicted any of that. So yeah.
Well, there we go. Well, thank you everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed listening, and we will see you again next time.